Hello, 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 and welcome to today's live stream. Before you make any comments about it, yes, I have had my hair cut into a shaped into a mohawk, and yes, it is rather fluffy because I haven't styled it because I literally just got it done because I'm off to a festival tomorrow, Download Festival. Anyone who's going to be there, let me know, and let's hook up and meet some LinkedIn people and internet people in real life. Today's session is about the importance of MED, minimum effective dose. Less is more. And normally there's a little countdown into this session, and there isn't today because I didn't do it because I'm busy thinking about going off to a festival and having loads of fun. So if you are watching this right now live on LinkedIn or on YouTube, please bung a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from. Please let me know, give me a wave and click the like button and hit those react buttons on LinkedIn as well. It all helps the reach. It all helps this go out to more people. And when it goes out to more people, it helps more people. And that's what I'm all about. Francesca, I can see you're on here. Nice to see you. So yeah, anyone who is watching this, please, please, please. And if you're watching it on a replay, please drop a comment as well and say hello, because obviously, although I will not reply to it in the video, I will reply to it after the fact in the comments. And as we go along, if you've got any questions at all, if you've got anything that you want to ask or any comments about anything that we cover, please drop those into the comments as well. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if anything I'm saying is ringing a bell. Let me know if anything maybe I'm saying you disagree with, because I'm always happy to have a chat with people who disagree, refine my ideas in some way. Hey, I've a nice one, mate. Good to see you. Yeah, so always happy to have people disagreeing with me. So please do not hesitate if you want to question anything I'm saying. But the idea of this video, the idea of this live stream this month, is to cover a topic which I've covered in a couple of my email newsletters. If you're not on my email newsletter yet, please do make sure you sign up for that. Actually, I will mention that now. In fact, I may have a little banner which I can pop up at the bottom of the screen. No, it's the wrong one. Lovely stuff. You see, well prepared today, ultra professional. junwin.com/SLI, capital SLI. For some reason only works with capitals. I thought URLs were not case sensitive, but there we go. SLI is the newsletter, the full name of which will be announced in September, because I am waiting for a trademark to be confirmed, so I can't give you its full name yet. But SLI is the name of the newsletter, junwin.com/SLI, capital letters, SLI. And in that newsletter, if you've been on it, I've been talking about MED for a little while, for the past few weeks. And also I have been posting about it quite a bit on LinkedIn as well. It's a concept which has been doing the rounds for a long time, just not really in the vein of stress management, and not in the area of business necessarily, or maybe it has, but it hasn't been called that. It initially comes from pharmacology, so kind of drug development and stuff like that. Minimum effective dose, MED, means the smallest amount of something that you can take as a drug that will give you the desired effect. Minimum effective dose, right? Makes sense. It's the smallest dose that you can take and get the result that you need. And then that kind of got adopted by the fitness industry for a while, which is where I first came across it. Minimum effective dose with regards to exercise. What's the least you can do to get the effect you want? And it ties in a bit with a principle or a law called Pareto's law, which you may have heard of, which comes up in business quite a lot. And that is the idea that you get 80% of the results from 20% of the effort. 80% of the results for 20% of the effort. That's called Pareto's law, Pareto's principle, sometimes called the 80-20 rule. But the idea is that you can get the majority of what you want to achieve from doing 20% of the stuff that you think you need to do. And then in order to get that final 20%, it actually takes a huge amount of effort. And so actually, maybe that final 20% isn't really worth it. An example of this with regards to kind of the fitness industry, if you were looking at body fat percentage, because a big goal of a lot of people is to lose body fat, right? Whether you agree with that being a goal that people should pursue or not is irrelevant at this point. A lot of people want to achieve it. 80% of those results can be achieved with only 20% of the effort. But to get to the level of leanness, which isn't always the healthy level of leanness, of bodybuilders and fitness models and stuff like that, it takes an enormous amount of effort. So you get the majority of the results with very little effort, or relatively little effort. Still takes effort, right? But if you want to get that final bit, you have to put in a huge amount more effort. And so for most people, the desired results are actually, or what they think are the desired results, aren't actually what they want. They're not worth that effort. The ROI is not enough. Now, in fitness and in business and in habits and lifestyle and stress management, there's a lot of talk around optimal, and the word optimal. Optimal means the absolute best out of all the options. Optimal is the perfect result, the perfect protocol to achieve those results. And I believe that the focus and the obsession, perhaps, with optimal isn't actually it's not actually optimal. Let's just say I don't believe that that's necessarily a good thing, because I mean, let me know in the comments if you've ever tried to change your habits or change your lifestyle or change what you do, your behaviors, in a way which you think is optimal. You pick the perfect plan on paper, whether it's a fitness plan, a business plan, whatever, and you go, I'm going to do that. Think New Year's resolutions, that kind of thing. And then you go at it with the best intentions. You have so much motivation. You are so disciplined to begin with. And then things start creeping in, things start getting in the way. And within a couple of weeks, you're like, oh my God, I'm not actually sticking to this 100% anymore, so I might as well give it up. Give me a shout in the comments if that sounds familiar. Give me a give me a hands up, give me a emoji of some kind, because I can certainly relate to that. I've done it so many different times. And that's the issue with optimal, because the best thing on paper, the best plan, the optimal plan, is not usually the most realistic. And it can be very, very difficult to stick to. Changing things is hard, and we tend to make it even harder than we need to. Right? We need to wind things back a little bit, rewind a bit, and go, okay, what's the minimum that I can do in order to get the effects that I want? And an example of this actually is something which I've done recently. Now, last year I was not in a particularly good way with my health. Many of you know that I have a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So I live with chronic pain, chronic fatigue, various other symptoms, brain fog, IBS. There's loads of stuff going on with fibromyalgia. It's a right party. One of the things that I struggle with is it flares up due to stress, right? And if I'm physically active, that is a stress. That's a physical stress on the body. However, if I'm completely sedentary, that's not good for it either. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, movement and exercise, because I know it's good for me and it helps long-term reduce the pain. But initially, when you start trying to do it when you're in a bad flare-up, it's horrific. And I used to be an incredibly active person. I'm still active, but I used to be incredibly active, working in gyms and so on and so forth, being in the fitness industry for many years. And for me, it's very hard to do a small amount of exercise when I look back at what I was able to do in the past. It's depressing. It's frustrating that I can't do now what I could do even 3 or 4 years ago. Four years ago, summer 2019 was the fittest and strongest I've ever been physically. And it frustrates me that I can't do that now. So when I first started getting back into movement earlier this year, in terms of when I talk about movement, I'm talking about resistance training for me personally. I found it very, very challenging. And what I had to do was look at the minimum effective dose. What is the least I could do? Because I could not afford to have another flare up. I could not afford to put my body under so much strain that I do one workout and then I cannot even get out of bed for 2 weeks, because that's how bad it can get sometimes, right? So I needed to look at what's the minimum I can do here. And so I did something very, very simple, very, very light, not very intense at all, but also only 3 different exercises. And I think I did maybe 5 reps of each exercise, and I did that once. So we're talking 5 reps of one exercise, 5 reps of another, 5 reps of another, and that was it, all on a very light weight. And that was it. And I did that maybe once or twice a week. That's where I started. And it felt wrong. It felt like it wasn't enough to get results. But what I realized was 2 things. One, it gets you more results than doing nothing. In fact, there's 3 things I realized here. 2, it gets you better results than doing loads of stuff once and then not being able to do it again. That doesn't get you results, right? Doing a tiny amount consistently gets better results than doing one big thing once and then being too burned out to do it again. Seems obvious, but you know, it's good to have a reminder. And then the third thing was that those initial tiny steps don't stay that small forever. Because as with anything, as with any stress followed by recovery, you get stronger, you get fitter, you become more capable, your capacity to do things increases. So I started off by doing that, but then after a couple of weeks, that started being all right, and I could do a little bit more, and then I could do a little bit more. And now I'm doing about a 30-minute to 40-minute workout 3 times a week with body weight and kettlebells. I just like this is it blows my mind that I was able to make that progression over a number of months. Now, I wanted to go in and do what I was doing now, more than what I was doing now, right at the start, and that just would not that it just wouldn't fly. There's no way that would happen. That was no way that would work. I would make myself very, very unwell. So where in your life are you maybe trying to do too much and it's not realistic, and you're beating yourself up and you're thinking this is really frustrating. I know what I want to do, I know what I want to achieve, and I know what I need to do to achieve that, but I can't seem to stick to it. I can't seem to keep it sustainable and level. It keeps this boom and bust cycle. That's what happens when we are too focused on optimal, because optimal in terms of our goals and optimal in terms of a plan on paper does not mean optimal for our lives. It does not mean optimal for our situation right now. What would actually be optimal usually is a lot less than we think. So we need to start thinking in terms of minimum effective dose. Now, if we look at this in terms of team leadership, we need to understand that actually getting our teams to do stuff around their own well-being, of course, I mean, dogs get involved, the stuff that we can do to get our teams involved in well-being and fitness and all of those kinds of things, to get their performance up, to get their well-being up, their quality of life improves. We need to help them understand this idea of minimum effective dose as well. And it also goes along with the work that we put on our teams, because putting too much on is not going to allow that workload to be sustainable. You will have people burning out, and even if they don't burn out, you'll have people leaving. You'll have people's performance decreasing because they become disillusioned with the role. They become frustrated because they can't do the things that they're being asked to do, and that is not a good feeling for anyone. So if we wind that back and go, what's the minimum that our team need to do in order to achieve the end result that is desirable, even if it's not 100%, even if it's 80% of the result, rather than going, okay, what I need to do is this is 100% of the goal, and so we need to put in 100% of the effort. Why not wind that back to go, well, this is 80% of the goal, and this is the 20% of the effort that will achieve that? Because that will allow us to manage stress at an environmental level and manage the stress that our people are under. And then in that case, it will be much more sustainable, and we're way more likely to get those achievable results long term. So in terms of strategies for improving this, hopefully this is all making sense so far. I can see a few people in the comments saying, so I've seen Ankit say, been there, done that. Yeah, we all have, right? It's something which is it's all too common. Is this making sense so far? If this is making sense so far, please drop me a comment. Please say, yeah, this is I get it. Because if not, I can go over it again in a different way. I can explain it in a different manner, or use a different analogy or a different story. If something doesn't make sense, please let me know, because it's important for me that you can take something away from this that is, number one, a new understanding of stuff, and number two, some practical tips that you can implement, which is what we're going to come on to in a moment. And obviously I'm aware of time. We're about 15 minutes in. I'm probably going to go for maybe another 10 minutes. I don't think it will be a full half hour this time. But please do let me know if things aren't making sense, because I do want to make sure that you get as much as possible from this, so that it's worthwhile endeavor. In the meantime, if any of those comments come in, I know there's a little bit of a delay on StreamYard, but if any of those comments come in, I'll address them as they come in. And remember, there is a Q&A little bit of time at the end as well. So if you've got any questions, you can always bung those in now, and I will answer them in the Q&A. But let's look at some practical strategies for implementing minimum effective dose. So what does this actually look like in practice? How can you start shifting your behavior from being more kind of doing too much to sustain to being more of a minimum effective dose approach? Just Jamal, small consistent action is definitely a key takeaway. Good stuff. Yeah, it really is. It really is about that small consistent action. So if we're talking about from a personal perspective, the first thing I would recommend that you do is audit your behaviors and your goals and stuff like that. So If we come back to stress management, because that's obviously my bag, if we're looking at minimum effective dose and how to manage your stress effectively, rather than being like, oh, I need to meditate for an hour a day and I need to journal and I need to go get up at 5 a.m. and do an ice bath and then go for a 5 mile run. This is the kind of stuff which people just don't stick to, all right? And it's all over social media. So rather than that, identify the areas of stress in your life. Rather than just trying to think of things that you can do that are almost like self-care type things where you think they might be stress relievers, identify the sources of the stress in the first place. Now, the sources of the stress could be work, they could be relationships, they could be health, they could be finances, but you need to identify the taps, the stressors which are pouring stress into your stress bucket, because some of those will be able to be turned off or down, at least. Some of them will be outside of your reach, but you'll be able to talk to the person who controls that, i.e. a line manager, a friend, a family member who maybe is able to control that source of stress a little more than you are. But identify the areas of the stress and then think about the minimum intervention that might bring about some kind of positive change. And I do not mean an overwhelming positive change. I mean 1 to 2%, reducing the flow by 1 to 2%, or letting some of that stress out of the bucket, 1 to 2%, just tiny little things. What is the minimum intervention for each of these sources of stress in your life? The second little tip I will give you on that front is to look for tools. Now, these tools could be technological tools, maybe productivity tools, apps, things like that, which might be really useful for you. There are certain things which have definitely helped me manage my stress recently. I've been using something like Google Calendar for a long time. I struggle with, as I said, brain fog. I'm very forgetful at times as well. Everything has to be in my Google Calendar, and that allows me to reduce the stress from forgetting to do stuff, right? I've also started using Notion more recently for project management and note taking and planning my content and stuff like that. Some people are using AI-based tools, ChatGPT for things like that, which might reduce stress with regards to some of the work jobs that you've got to do. So there's a lot of tools out there and apps that you could implement in your life to manage those areas of stress that you identified in step one. So identify some tools. Now, they may not be technological tools. They may be pen and paper tools. They may be keeping a journal, having a to-do list in a certain place, having a little notepad that you keep in your pocket or your bag at all times to jot down things that you need to do. Whatever it happens to be, whatever those kind of sources of stress might be, the tools will be different. And then the third tip I would advise you to do is to make MED a habit. Make that minimum effective dose a habit. So what are the interventions that you're going to do, and how can you attach those to existing habits? How can you make them part of your daily routine? Usually the most routine parts of your day will be the first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You will have other parts of your day that are routine. Maybe your lunch break is routine. Maybe getting home from work is a routine. Maybe your journey to work is a routine. Sometimes a lot of the day might be a bit unroutine and a bit more chaotic. So find the areas of your life which are more routine and then plug these new habits into that, because you're way more likely to stick to it if you go, when I do this, I'm going to do that. When I flip the kettle on to make my coffee in the morning, I will check my productivity app, whichever you happen to be doing, and see what you're doing that day. Certain areas like that. When before I get in the shower, I will do 10 squats if you're looking at a kind of fitness related thing. So whatever it happens to be, make it a habit and integrate those strategies into those daily routines. You don't necessarily have to pick the most impactful tasks and the most impactful habits, just the easiest ones to put in, because then you get points on the board early. If you've got any kind of questions about habit change, I can give you some pointers on that. Feel free to drop me a message. I've got a little kind of process around habit change, which can help kind of attach these new habits into your existing routines. And also think about, as the habits that you want to do, they should be really short habits. So like less than 2 minutes ideally, because if it's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's a series of habits rather than one habit. It starts becoming a kind of a more complex thing to do. So try and keep these things as simple as possible. So first off, start with an audit, see where the sources of stress are and what the minimum intervention would be on each of those. Have a think about tools that you can use, whether they're apps and technological tools or whether they're pen and paper tools, and then start making it into a habit. Pick 3 or 4 things, plug them into your daily routine, and then you will help that consistency build over time. When it comes to leadership and cultures of stress resilience and things like that, there are kind of three things I want to touch on here before we close off. If you lead a team, the best thing that you can do is to lead by example. If you lead by example and openly practice minimum effective dose in your own life and in your own behaviors, and then share your experiences with your team, you will find that that is one of the best ways to bring people on the journey with you. People will see what you're doing and go, wow, that's actually a really inspired way of doing things. Being able to come back from the perfectionism of needing to get 100% and actually go, okay, 80% is enough. And in order to get that 80%, I only need to do 20% of the effort compared to the 100% that I have been putting in. We reduce the output by 20%, but we reduce the effort by 80%. So really overall, we're achieving so much more. And by doing that, people around you are going to go, wow, yeah, I'm going to do that too. And that's going to improve my quality of life and my performance. So lead from the front as a leader. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is to provide training. So organize workshops or training sessions to help your team understand MED and how it corresponds to their work. You can run those trainings yourself if you wanted to. You can bring someone like me in to train your team on how to use MED in a work capacity. I've just seen Mike popping up there. Replace an ill-serving habit with a new, better one. It's almost impossible just to delete a bad habit. Yeah, it can be. If you're looking at, I'm talking about putting in new habits rather than removing bad habits at this point. Removing bad habits is more tricky, as Mike says, because they are, well, habitual. What's in a name? There are ways to do it. Big thing is removing the cues to that habit in the first place. It's why if you're a recovering alcoholic, you're probably not going to go into a pub when you're first starting to try and quit alcohol. Because the cues are all there around you. So it is quite challenging to replace an ill-serving habit, to delete an ill-serving habit, but it's not impossible. And replacing it with a better one is definitely a potential thing. But right at this point, we're just talking about implementing new things. Don't worry too much about your bad habits at this point. It's just about bringing new ones in. So yeah, provide training. As I said, you can do that yourself. You can bring someone like myself or other people in who will talk about this kind of stuff. Make sure that the trainers that you bring in, practice what they preach and they live minimum effective dose themselves. Otherwise, they won't understand the concept of it. If you're bringing someone in to talk about work-life balance and stress management and stuff like that, but they're always on the go and they seem to be kind of hyper-wired and overworking and stressed, that's probably not the best person to bring in. And then the third thing in terms of leadership is to encourage balance, promote a work culture that values efficiency over perfection, efficiency and well-being over working long hours, and encourage the team to use MED in their approach. So you're leading from the front, you're providing training and workshops, and then the culture you develop within your team is focused around efficiency. And by efficiency, we mean bang for your buck. We mean getting the best results for the least amount of effort, which seems obvious, right? It's a bit like financial ROI. You want to spend, if you think about it in this way, if you have a company, if you're the boss of a company, if you're the CEO and you've got a budget and you can spend 100% to get of that budget to get 100% of the sales you want, right? 100% of the marketing budget, and you get 100% of the sales you want. Or you can spend 20% of the budget and get 80% of the sales you want. The ROI is so much better, even if you're not getting 100% off the back of it. Your ROI is so much better. It's not 1-to-1 anymore. It's 1-to-4. You know, you're getting 4 times as much back as you're putting in, rather than the same amount back as you're putting in. And if anyone came to you with that as a financial piece of advice, you'd be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So consider that in terms of people and the effort that your people are putting in. The effort that you want them to put in should have the highest ROI, and that does not come from giving 100%. No matter what the hustle grind gurus tell you, it is better to scale things back and manage efficiency rather than managing perfection. If you prioritize well-being, you're also prioritizing performance. The two things go hand in hand. So if you have an old school leader who's like, oh, this well-being stuff is a bit fluffy, it's not like it's not our place as a business, we're all about making the money. Cool, yeah, business is about making money, but if you want to make more money, you need to be looking at the efficiency and performance of your people, and the way to do that happens to be the same way as you would improve the well-being of the people. You don't have to care about the well-being of the people. You should, but you don't have to in order to make this stuff a priority. You can just care about your profits. And if you care about your profits, you care about your performance of your people, because they're the people who drive your profits, right? It's not rocket science. So the three, just to recap, the three practical strategies for implementing this yourself. Number one, do an audit of the sources of your current stress, the areas of stress, and the minimum intervention that you could make to improve them. Secondly, identify tools that you can use, whether they're pen and paper tools, technology tools, apps, and so on, and make it a habit. So connect it to parts of your routine which are already pretty set in stone. Things like brushing your teeth, things like getting up in the morning, things like having a shower, things like going to bed. Wherever there is a set bit of routine, plug them into there. That's your 3 tips for getting it done for yourself. As a leader, your 3 tips. Number one, follow those first 3 tips and lead from the front. Second one, organize training and workshops so that your team can understand this concept. Bring me in if you want. I'm always happy to chat about that stuff, or you can go for someone else. Or if you really think you understand this and you can deliver it in a way which is meaningful, deliver the training yourself. Hiring an expert is a better ROI than trying to do it yourself, in my opinion. I'm terrible at DIY. I'm terrible at building stuff. That's why I don't do it. I can't fix my car. I get someone else to do it. It costs me money, but it's done good, right? Compared to if I did it, I'd just make it worse. Same deal. Bring an expert in. That's my advice. And then the third thing, encourage balance and prioritize well-being and performance and efficiency over perfection, hustle, and grind. Encourage your team to use MED in their approach, in their personal lives and in their work lives. So if you have got any thoughts around this, if you've got any questions around this, please drop them into the chat now. If not, we will close this off, and hopefully this has been really useful for you. Please remember that I do put out a weekly newsletter by email that is all around stress management for individuals, for leaders, for their teams. So from an individual perspective and a systemic perspective, if you go to junwin.com/SLI, that's capital S, capital L, capital I. For some reason, as I said earlier, I thought it was not case sensitive, but it is. So you can sign up to the SLI newsletter. If you're not sure, or you can't find that for whatever reason, if you go to my profile, the link's at the top of my LinkedIn profile. It's on my YouTube profile as well if you're watching this on YouTube. It's in my featured section on LinkedIn. It's everywhere, right? If you go to junwin.com, just that website, you can sign up on the main page there as well, if that's easier. So sign up to that and you'll get weekly stuff. Next week, next Wednesday, I've got a ticketed masterclass. If you're interested in doing more of a workshop on this for 2 hours next Wednesday, there are tickets available to that, and I can give you a discount code. So please drop me a message if you're interested in that. If you're on my newsletter, you would have got that discount code this morning. You get 25% off the tickets, but it's super affordable. And if you're not already following me on LinkedIn, please do that, because I put out content every single day on this topic. With that, I'm going to love you and leave you. I've just seen a message there. Yeah, I would love to connect with you too, mate. Yeah, drop me a connection. Adding new habits which are more productive in less time with more efficiency. Yeah, there we go. Lovely stuff. No problem, Francesca. Great to have you here as well. Please share this around with anyone you think will find it useful, because the replay of this event will be up indefinitely now. It's live, but it's on the LinkedIn event and it's on my YouTube page. So feel free to share it with anyone that you think would find this useful, and I look forward to chatting with you more. Really grateful for you to have watched this. Hope you have a fantastic week. I'm going to go and get ready for my festival. Enjoy your week, enjoy the sunshine, and I'll speak to you all very soon.